A very good day to each one of you who is watching this video. And I am Sachin, Assistant Professor of English at New Horizon College, Kasturinagar. Today I would like to deal with the topic from the book Perceptions to uh, prescribed for the first year BBA and BCom students. So the second semester students of BBA and BCom, we have a chapter called The Toys of Peace. It's not visible. The Toys of Peace, written by H. Munro. His pen name is Saki. Okay, Saki, Saki. Okay, I would like to give you a brief description about the author, which is there in the text, but this is very much relevant for our topic today. So I would like to read out a few of the lines from here. Hector Hugh Munro was a witty British author who published under the pen name Saki. H. Munro was born in Burma, now known as Myanmar, in 1870. He was educated at Exmouth and at Bedford Grammar School. At 23, Munro became a police officer in India and was posted to Burma, where he contracted malaria before returning to England in 1895. So, what's important here is the way that he had been living his life at the front line of a battlefield. So, we see the pen name called Saki. He has taken it from the boyish cupbearer to the gods of Edward Fitzgerald, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, that particular book, and continued to write all his fiction under this pseudonym. So that is where he has taken his nickname called Saki from. Dear students, let's see how he has come at the back end of life and how has he come to the end of his life. Let's see. During World War the First, Munro fought in France and was killed in action on November 14, 1916 by German sniper fire during the Battle of Anson. Now, his death was at the battlefield, by a German sniper. Okay, now, being in the battlefield, a person who is in the political regime, like, a police officer, a military man, and a soldier, etc., he has come to another level in his writing. Now, what is that? He is known as a witty writer. What do you mean by wit? It is known as humor. Wit. Well, let's look at a little more deeply. He has written many of his writings as a satiristic form of writing. Now, the question is, what is a satire? A satire is an art form. It's a kind of a writing wherein which you try to exaggerate the faults done by a particular person, like exaggerate and react. Especially, you must have seen satiristic cartoons in the newspapers, etc., etc. So now, this chapter called "The Toys of Peace" is one such uh, satire. Now, satire is humorous, and there are lots of witty statements that he is including in this particular chapter. Very well, I would like to write down these few points to make the summary short. So the first, the chapter's name is The Toys of Peace by H. Munro. Hope it is visible to you. The Toys of Peace by H. Munro. Let's look at the main points that I've made. I've divided the entire chapter into 7 subtitles in order to grasp the entire, the plot very easy. So first, I have given the news. So the first is the and news and the new experiment. News and the new experiment. That's the first part. And the second part, the second topic that I have given to this text is uh, Easter gift expectations by us. Easter gift expectations. Easter gifts expectations. Then we have presenting Easter gifts or presenting toys of peace. Presentation. presentation of toys of peace. Let's move on to the next topic, that is the instruction to play. How to play with the toys of peace. The instruction. And the fifth one, we have the fifth one, which is the history of violence, the history homework. Let's put it there. The history homework. And the sixth one is the self-contemplation of Harvey. The self-contemplation of Harvey. Or let me put it in this way. The compiling, the thought to compile a new history. Thought to compile new history. I hope it's visible to you. I'll explain after this. And we have the last final point, which is the seventh one, the new game by the students. The new game released on us. Sorry for making you wait a little longer. Now the things are very in our hands. The Toys and Bees is a chapter written by H.H. Munro, rather a short story written by H.H. Munro, a witty and satiristic short story. I've divided the entire plot into seven subtopics. The first one is the news and the new experiment. Then we have the Easter kids expectation. Presentation of toys of peace is the third one, and fourth. Instruction to play, how to use toys of peace. Then we have the history homework, which the students have to do, which brings up little more details. I will take it. And the sixth one is the thought to compile a new history, which Harvey has. And the seventh one is the new game with these toys. Let me introduce to you the characters in this particular short story. Hope I can use that part of the board and hope it will be visible. Now, we have the siblings here. Yeah. And then Eleanor and Harvey. They are brothers and sisters. So Harvey is a brother, Eleanor is his sister. And now Eleanor has two children. The two children, they named are and Eric. Eric and Bertie, they are the two children that uh, Eleanor has. Eric is 11 years old and Bertie is 9.5. So two children, 11 years old, Eric, and Bertie, 9.5 years old. And we have Harvey, Bertie's and Eric's uncle, Eleanor, Harvey's sister. So if you know these main characters, then it's easy for us to grasp the idea. Now, the story begins. The story begins with a newspaper cutting which Eleanor brings to Harvey. The sister brings to brother and says, "Hey, Eleanor, do you see this newspaper cutting which speaks about the toys of peace?" Now, there is a new concept. So the first concept is the news and the new experiment. Now, let's look at what is the news. Based on this news comes the entire writing. Before that, a short, uh, information. So this particular write-up or this particular witty short story is a kind of a satiristic response to the National Peace Council, the coordinating committee of anti-war organizations. So now we should understand the context very clearly. It's the French history and the France context we have to keep in mind. And so during those First World War, there were many committees and associations that tried to alleviate or try to, suppress and dismiss the war. Peace councils. So the National Peace Council, once they had brought in the idea of toys of peace, you bring in toys that is not, violent, and that children might have, peaceful attitude towards things, and they will not aggravate their instincts, the primitive instinct called violence, etc. Okay? Let's keep this in bracket and let's get back to the story. Now, the news is that Harvey said Eleanor, and Eleanor, sorry, Eleanor said to Harvey, and Harvey tries to read the news. The news goes like this: that the National Peace Council is organizing an exhibition wherein which the toys of peace are exhibited. The National Peace Council, the Anti-War Association, is organizing an exhibition where the toys of peace are exhibited. Now, toys of peace is a new thing. Now, they say this statement is very important. Boys, the council admits, naturally love fighting and all the panoply of war. Now, basically, what they're trying to say that there is that primitive instinct of violence in every human being, and especially in boys. So, using the batteries of guns and parent tanks and what dreadnought is a kind of a warship, and also the squadrons, aircrafts, military aircrafts, all these kind of toys and the soldiers and guns, etc. If they're using, the children tend to have a violent attitude. It's like today's video game, PUBG game. It can bring so much of violence into your mind. So that's kind of an approach. So now National Peace Council wants to stop such kind of attitude that are brought in the mind of the students or the children. So they have brought in this peace toys. Peace toys. Okay, let's move on. So that is the news that is. Hearing the news, we have uh, Eleanor saying, "Dear brother Harvey, every Easter you bring Easter gifts to my children. This time when you come, let's try this new experiment. You shall not bring any guns or any soldiers or any kind of such violent toys. Go around and pick the civilian toys. Civilian toys, a common man, maybe a common man, a person, a peasant, and a farmer, etc. etc. So that is the new experiment they did. So Eleanor and Harvey, both brother and sister, the siblings, planned to give Bertie and Eric the toys of peace. That's how the name also justifies the toys of peace. Now, like every year, there comes our dear Uncle Harvey with the peace toys this time. But the children, they have the Easter gift expectation. They are sure every year they are going to get this gift. And the children waiting very, very eagerly. Now, you should understand these children are born during those days when there war-torn country and all kind of violence in the newspapers. All toys are new, violent toys, etc., etc. Children are very much oppressed with the informations, and the expectation of the children. And Uncle Harvey brings the kids and opens it up. So there is a first piece of paper that he takes out. Then there's a discussion going on between Bertie and Eric. They're saying that it's going to be an Albanian army, or could that be Albanian army, or very interestingly, he says it could be, yeah, it could be the Somalian camel corps. So children are so much, aware of all these kind of things, the military gowns that they wear, etc., etc., etc. Fine. Now let's look at. There was an incident. What happened was one of Aunt Susan brought these children the siege of Adrianople toy. So siege of Adrianople is a very famous war fort in the history of France, and the Bulgarian words, of harsh words, these children use while they are using these battle toys. So hearing that, Eleanor collects these toys and keeps it. Siege of Adrianople toy set. Like you have the doctor set, etc. Such kind of a set here, but it's a battle set. Okay, that is a background again. That is why, once again, Eleanor insisting on this particular thing. Let's move on to the next one. So, expects Albanian soldiery or camel corps, etc., etc. But what comes out? The toys, the first ever toys of peace, the toy of peace, which is brought out from the gift box by Uncle Harvey, is, what? Uh, Very interestingly, it's a municipal dustbin. Municipal dustbin. Then we have another person being brought out, John Stuart Mill. Like that, we have more than 17. I've just numbered, and there are 17 toys of peace that are being brought out that are brought out from this particular gift box, like you know, the Young Women's Christian Association building. Then Robert Drake's one of the famous French poet, the founder of Sunday schools, and we have the municipal wash house, loaves of baked bread, sanitary bakehouse, and sanitary inspector, district councillor, official of the local government, and ballot box, tools of industry such as wheelbarrow and hoe, spade. And we have the model of beehive, etc. Then we have School of Art, Public Library, Mrs. Hermans. Mrs. Hermans is a poetess, and is Rowland Hill, who introduced the penny postal system. This is so John Herschel. So there are 17 different types of toys of peace that are presented in front of these two curious children. Children are, astonished at seeing these kind of gifts, and they were very, very angry in a way, but they did not show anything. So that is the Easter gifts expectation of children and the presentation of the toys of peace. Now, not a violent toy, but very common, very dignified personalities of France and England is being brought out as a miniature portion, miniature type. Uncle Harvey is trying to instruct them. The children are wonderstruck and they said, how are we to play with this? How are we to play with this? Then Uncle Harvey says, you know what? In our time, we did not have such kind of toys, and you are blessed to have it. And I will tell you how to do that. You have to conduct as a parliament election is going on, a very peaceful election, and there is this election taking place, and the councillor wins, etc. Ballot box has to be kept, and person one by one you keep it, and they are putting the vote. They are casting the vote, and then they are winning the election. So you know, the children are much more aware of the real election system that is going on in the country during that time. So there is a description. Yeah, Uncle Harvey says you might take two of them contest in a seat in a parliament, said Harvey, and have an election. So Eric says, with rotten eggs and free fights and ever so many broken heads and noses all bleeding and everybody drunk as can be, echoed Bertie. Now, this is a real fact that is happening when an election takes place in that particular place. But Uncle Harvey is trying to tell them it's a peaceful election. So, kind of bringing in the satire over there and all this kind of thing. And whereas uh, nothing of the kind, says Harvey, uncle. Nothing in the least like that. Votes will be put in the ballot box, and the mayor will count them, and he will say which has received most votes, etc. So now bringing in the election, and again a satire that by Munro, telling us that the elections are not taking place that way, and the representatives themselves are violent in doing all these kind of peaceful kind of election in the most hostile manner. So there is an irony in itself. Okay, that is the presentation of findings and instruction to the children. Children, they hear the beautiful instruction by Uncle Harvey, but they are very, very agitated, and they say, no, we are not interested, and they walk away. They say that they have got to complete the homework. The homework is a history homework to read about the Bourbon period. The Bourbon period of France is a time where in which the worst of heinous atrocities and crimes and wars and looting and everything has taken place. Looting and everything has taken place. Uh, Hearing this, Uncle Harvey goes much more sad. The violence, the children that they study, and Uncle Harvey tries to, what kind of camouflage the ideas. Louis the XIV is one of the best-known autocrats of France, and he says the particular famous stating, "I am the state, I am the nation, I am the state." So such a kind of a dictatorial, autocratic person. The students knows it very well from the history book. Uncle Harvey tries to tell, no, 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 he is a very good gardener, landscape gardener. The way he laid out Versailles was so much admired that it was copied all over Europe. So he tries to bring down the violence from the children's mind, presenting this particular dictator as a landscape gardener and an architecture who has built so many good infrastructure in France, etc. Then there is another person that they are studying in the history book, that is Madame du Barry. Madame du Barry is, when I checked in Google, there, she is the last royal mistress of France, last royal mistress of France, and she was actually, killed very brutally during the French Revolution riots. But how does Uncle Harvey tell these children, Bertie and Eric? She was another great lover of gardening, said Harvey evasively. In fact, I believe the well-known Rose du Barry was named after her. And now I think you had better play for a little and leave your lessons till later. So Uncle Harvey tries to manage to manipulate the ideas and to take out the violence aspect of the real stories, the histories, etc., etc. And he's tired of it, and he says, "Okay, guys, you go and play now. Later on, you can do the history lessons." And he goes to the library. That is where we have the sixth point, the thought to compile a new history, the thought to compile a new history. If Uncle Harvey goes, Harvey goes to the library, sits there contemplating. He thinks, how can I tell these children about the French, the history of France? It's filled with the York and Lancaster period, the Napoleonic era, and the 30 years of war. Will I be able to compile a new history? All these kind of thoughts are going on in his mind. A history without bloodshed, a history without violence, a history which the children can read and get a new inspiration rather than getting into the violent attitudes and the violent action that had happened in the past, etc., etc. So regarding the Spanish Armada and the Battle of Waterloo, all these kind of things I should remove, and a beautiful history I should write. He was thinking, is it possible? Kind of. Suddenly he remembers, oh, it's been a while that he was spending his time in the library thinking of all this, and he rushes to the children who are playing, who are studying, or whiling away time in their room. So Uncle Harvey goes slowly towards the room of these two children and tries to find out what these children are doing. Very interestingly, I would like to read these few lines quickly. It was time, he thought, to go back to the boys' room and see how they were getting on with their peace toys. As he stood outside the door, he could hear Eric's voice raised in command. Bertie chimed in now and again with a helpful suggestion. That is Louis the 14th, Eric was saying. That one in knee breeches? The uncle said invented Sunday school. It isn't a bit like him, but it will have to do. Well, give him a purple coat from Paint Box by and by, said Bertie. Yes, and red heels. That is Madame de Maintenon, that one he called Mrs. Hemans. She begs Louis not to go on this expedition, etc., etc. So the children are slowly transforming these civilian miniature toys, YWCA, the Young Women Christian Associations, the building, the municipal dustbin, etc., etc. What is John Stuart Mill, a prominent politician, etc., turning out to be the historical, brutal characters like Louis the 14th and all the other, Marshal Saxon, who is the commander in force. They are transforming the toys piece into the violent, good old, battle toys. They land at Manchester in the dead of the night, and Jacobite conspirator gives them the keys of the fortress. Peeping in through the doorway, Harvey observed that the municipal dustbin had been pierced with holes to accommodate the muzzles. So the municipal dustbin has made holes, and they've kept machine guns inside that. And now the imaginary cannon is there, and we have John Stuart Mill had been dipped in red ink and apparently stood like Marshal Saxe. Marshal Saxe is one of the prominent commanders of French army, French army. Louis orders his troops to surround the Young Women's Christian Association and seize them, a lot of them. Once back at the Louvre, and the girls are mine, he exclaims. We must use Mrs. Hermans again for one of the girls. She says, never. He bleeds dreadfully, exclaimed Bertie, splashing red ink liberally over the facade of the association building. The soldiers rush in, avenge his death with the utmost savagery. 100 girls are killed. Here, Bertie emptied the remainder of the Reading over the devoted building, and surviving 500 are dragged off to the French ships. I have lost Marshall, says Louis, but I do not go back empty handed. Harvey stole away from the room and sought out his sister. So now, in the room, when Harvey is looking, there is a big war is going on. The Beast Toys is transformed into soldiers and commanders and machine guns and all these kind of things. And Harvey is seeing a very, very furious battlefield with the commanding, with the accent with which the children command like a commander, and all these kind of action taking place. Harvey is kind of, bewildered looking at what's going on. He rushes back to Eleanor, and rushes and tells, "Sister, our experiment is a big failure. Our experiment is a big failure. We bought them the toys of peace in order to bring down their primitive instinct of violence and violence. But what happens? It is too late that we have given them these toys. It should have been much earlier. We can't be we can't be closing one eye and shutting the other when the entire France is under violence, when the entire elders and the what politicians and those in power you know bring out policies and violence and wars everywhere. You can't be changing the mindset of these little children by giving them a toys of peace. We have to change right from there, not from here. So that kind of an idea is conveyed. So what does H.H. Munro does here? He is giving out their voices, voices out so powerfully with this satiristic short story, telling the National Peace Council it is not by doing such kind of exhibitions of toys of peace that you bring down violence. Rather, meet the persons concerned and bring in lots of compromises and wave out war. That is what he's trying to convey to the National Peace Council. So the violence is there out there, but what you require to do here is how to change your attitude towards violence, and it should begin from the elders, and that they should see it from their own examples and then practice in their life. I hope you have understood the particular chapter, the toys of peace. If you have any doubts, you can ask me and I would respond to you, and hope these pointers would give the short story in a very the thought patterns of the short story very clear to you. So we have the news and the new experiment that they plan. Then there's an Easter gift that is Uncle Harvey brings in, and children have their own expectations of the Albanian force and also camel corps, etc. But it was not so. The toys of peace is presented to them. All these kind of toys of peace, the children are very, very discouraged, and Uncle Harvey tells them how to use these toys of peace, etc. The history homework, children are not interested in going to do the history homework. The Bourbon period, as well as Louis the 14th, you should never forget those two incidents. And we have the thought to compile a new history by Uncle Harvey, listening to the children. And then we have the new game propounded or created by the children, transforming the toys of peace into the violent toys, and they are enjoying their battlefield. I hope the chapter is clear. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you.